All right, so we're going to talk about more enumerables today. So enumerables are so useful and helpful, and you're going to use them a lot, both in the rest of Mod 1. You're probably already finding you're using them a lot in your project, but you're going to use them for the rest of your software development career, whether in Ruby or some other language. So we want to like break it down and make sure you're really understanding what's going on with these enumerables so you can apply it to multiple situations, a different context. So we're going to talk about the block return values today specifically. We're going to explore some other enumerables like max by, their opposites, meaning like min and min by, and sort by. And we're going to practice utilizing all of these different enumerables. So what I'd like you to do first is we're going to take about 4 minutes or so to do a quick warm up. Thank you everyone for being here on time. We do appreciate that. So, all right, great. So I just dropped in your Slack channel. I dropped a quick warm up. Oh, it says 5 minutes. I'm going to check in with you at 4 minutes and see how you're doing. But go ahead and in a text editor or in a journal, whichever you prefer, go ahead and work through that warm up. Hear me well. Okay, so let's talk about these warm-up activities. So the first one, we've got an array of office mates, and then the first one asks us to create a new array with all of the names upcased. Does someone want to share out what they did, what code they implemented to accomplish that task? I know it's early, it's Monday, it's like not even 9:10 a.m. V, go ahead.
I chose to iterate using map.
Okay, perfect. And
oh, you want, okay. So iterate through the office mates array using map. And then inside office mate singular.
Sure, I'll just put mate for ease of typing.
And then you want puts name dot upcase.
Yeah, let's not use a puts. Let's just do, you said mate. Wait, what?
Oh, mate dot upcase. Yeah.
Cool. And then, so then if I want to see what the output is, let's store this in a variable. Big mates. Does that work? And then we can stick a pry in there. And then let's see what big mates is holding, if that indeed did what we wanted it to do. Awesome. It looked like it did. Great. V, thank you so much. Isabel, did you have a question, or were you wanting to?
Kind of. So I did dot maps as well, but I found this on the Ruby docs. I'm kind of just unclear on what it means. So I did office mates dot map parentheses and colon upcase, and it worked. And I don't really know why or what that means.
Yeah. So instead of this, you did like this. Yeah. So this is a shortcut. It has a name, I believe it's called a proc, but I don't use them too much, especially in Mod 1, because they're less readable. But all it is a shortcut for this. So what's going on there is when your block variable, if you're just calling a single method on the block variable, you can shorten it with that. Oh, I can't. How do I go forward? I used to know. Anyways, okay. Like a redo is, what was it, V?
Go for Command Shift Z.
Wait, comma.
Command, sorry, that was my pronunciation. Command Shift Z.
Mine doesn't do it. So, okay, that's okay. I think there's different settings in Atom. So it used to work for me and now it doesn't. So I need to fix something. Anyways, but that shortcut that you saw, Isabel, is just a shortcut for when you're calling a single method on the block variable and nothing else is going on. So you can use it if you, here's my thing with using shortcuts. If you can fully explain what is going on, then I'm totally fine with you using it. But if it's just like, oh, I saw a thing and it worked, then I would rather you did not use the shortcut in that case, just because it can make things more unreadable. Okay, So if that was confusing, don't worry about it. I am going to continue to use the do end shortcut even over curly braces because I think this is just the most readable format. Of course, wherever you end up working, they're going to have some kind of convention guide on rules that they want you to follow regarding when to use shortcuts, where, and in what context. So great question. Cool. So this worked, our big mates worked. And the reason big mates was storing the thing we wanted it to, this, right, was because the return value of map is the transformed array, right? So after map runs, this do end block, you can kind of think of it as like an argument. Actually, that shortcut Isabel talked about allows you to see a little bit more that this is just an argument that is being passed to map, right? So we're just passing an argument, but the argument happens to be a do end block. So after this whole thing runs, the return value of map gets stored in our variable. Now, what is map looking for in order to know how to transform every element? How does map know? And don't think too hard about this question. It's not a trick question. Anyone have an idea? How does map know how to transform each element? Liam.
Oh wait, maybe I misheard the question. I assume that map just wants to go through, it assumes that you're giving it an array and that you're going to want to do the same thing to each part of it at least once.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, absolutely. That is correct. Adam, do you have more to add to that?
Sure. So the question was, how does it know to do it to each? I would say it's the do word, technically.
Yeah, and maybe not how does it know to do it to each, but how does it know what to do to each? Ben, did you have a?
Yeah, I think it'll just kind of see what's happening to the block variable and then just kind of apply it to, you know, what's going on.
Mm-hmm. Yeah. Yeah. So what I'm looking for, which is not like, sometimes I think we think really, really complicated answers to these to questions, right? How does map know what to do or how to transform each element? Well, all it does is look into our block. It looks into the block and says, whatever the return value of this block is, that's what I'm going to use to transform or replace the element that I'm currently iterating over. Okay, so if I've got a bunch of stuff happening up here, like if I do mate dot reverse, will that work? Well, let's do up dot, oh my gosh, down case. And then if we do mate dot, let's do mate 0, right? So this will do a lot of things. So mate right here, mate is just a string, right? So here I'm down casing the string, I'm pulling out just the first letter of the string, and then I'm doing an up case. So right now, if I rerun this and I try to see what big mates, oh God, what is that? Goodness. Okay, my tab. Oh, I'm not in a pry because I took my pry out. Okay, that makes more sense. It's Monday, friends. All right, so now if big mates, okay, this is the code. When I press enter here, make a guess, what is big mates going to be holding? I'm doing a lot of stuff in my block now. Let's see if you're right. It's the same thing. Okay, because this, although this is changing the string, I'm not storing those changes anywhere, and it's not actually changing the original data. So we're doing things, but the last thing, these blocks work just like methods, where the return value of the block is the last line of code evaluated in the block. So this is the last line of code evaluated, mate.upcase. And so that's going to be the return value of the block. And that's how map knows how to replace the element. Okay, how about if I did this? What would be the value of big mates in this situation? Make a guess in your head. I say in your head because I'm used to, you know, you being here in front of me, and I don't want people yelling it out. All right, let's see if your guess was accurate. Is that what you guessed? Because now if I put that 0 as the last line of code in my block, that is the last thing to be evaluated, which makes it the return value of this block. And that's what map will use to transform each element. Questions? All right, how about number 2, find all the office mates with 4 or more letters in their name. What did you do for this one? Call it long mates. Anyone want to share the code that they wrote for this one? Sid.
So I did long mates equals office mates dot select. Do go through each mate, and then mate dot length greater than or equal to 4.
Awesome. Thank you so much. So let's test this out. And what do y'all think? Do you agree with the code that Sid wrote? Will this accomplish, what did we want, 4 or more letters in their name? Well, that looks about right. And Jim and Pam are missing, and they have less than 4. So that seems accurate. Awesome. Thank you so much, Sydney. So that looks good. Also, I just want to remind you, select is synonymous with find all. So you could use either of those and you will get the same results. So now what, can anyone kind of synthesize what is select looking for in its block in order to know how to get its final return value? Because remember, select just returns an array of elements that match the criteria. So what is select actually looking for? Mike?
It's looking for elements that meet that criteria as it iterates through the array.
Okay, so what is it looking, you're right, what is it looking for in this block?
To see if the element's length is either equal or greater than 4. Is that what you,
and what will, yeah, what will this evaluate to?
Oh, true, right, true.
Right, so select is looking for that Boolean value, right? But remember yesterday, Friday, we learned about truthy and falsy. So what do you all think? Is select looking for true or truthy?
Truthy.
Truthy. You know how we can tell? Let's do a little test. What if we did this? What if we just did a string of hello? Does a string of hello evaluate to truthy or falsy? Everyone, anyone remember? Just yell it out. Go ahead, Adam.
Truthy.
Yeah, thank you. It's so contrived with Zoom. So yeah, so remember a string, any kind of string, even an empty string, right, would evaluate to truthy in Ruby. So if we have this, this code's going to evaluate the same way. So select is looking for that last line of code that's evaluated. If we've got something that evaluates to truthy, what will happen to long mates here? So make a guess right now, make an assumption. What will long mates be holding right now? So I know I don't like my screens like stacked because I feel like I don't have enough real estate. So, all right, let's test. Right. So it's the original array. It's actually not the original array. It's a new array with everything that met the condition. But because this block evaluated to truthy every time, It took every single element and put it into our final array. Right? So if we, what if we have this in our code? So we have it evaluating our condition, but then we've got a true underneath it. What will that evaluate to? So what will long mates be in this case? And everyone's just guessing in their head. So same thing, right? It has everyone in the array, because although this condition was either a true or a false, it was not the last line of code to run within the block. So every time the block ran, true was returned, which true is truthy. So then every element got selected into the return value. Okay. Questions about that one? These are fun. How about the last one where you needed to find Pam and maybe you know that there's only one person named Pam. What was the code you wrote for this one? We'll call it the Pam mate. Yeah, Catherine.
So I assumed that when you wanted us to find Pam, that you wanted the index of Pam. So that's what I did. So I did office mates dot find index. Do mate, and then mate equals the string of Pam.
I didn't even know this was an enumerable. Let's see what that gives us. So my assumption, right, just based off of this, thank you, Ruby, for having methods named exactly what they're doing, that this will iterate through and give me the index of Pam, or whatever the first element that matches that criteria. You have index of 1. Oh, that's interesting. That would be a really useful enumerable in some cases. So usually, though, we don't care about the index because that's not necessarily useful information to a user or an endpoint or anything like that. So a lot of times, instead of find index, Catherine, thank you for that. I just learned a new enumerable today. Instead of find index, if we just do the dot find, then what it'll do is actually return the element that made this condition true. And so let's look at what that looks like. So now our Pam mate should just be the string Pam, right? And maybe this was a little trivial of an example, but usually if you think about these arrays of office mates, they're probably going to be objects, right? Because objects are rich in information. So when we want to find this, we might want to find the mate of Pam and have the object return so we can get a bunch of different information out of that object and have it respond to methods and things like that. Cool, so find, I'm not gonna do too much with this because find is actually working the same way as select. It is looking for this block to evaluate to truthy or falsy. However, with find, it's only looking for the first element that makes the condition evaluate to truthy, and then it stops its iteration. So find is good if you only want one thing or the first thing that matches a condition. Cool. Any questions about map, select, find all, find, or the return values or those blocks? Seems good. All right. Of course, if questions come up, just ask them. The next thing I want to do is do kind of another warm up, but now you're warm, so it's a up. It's an exercise, that's what it is. All right, so take a few minutes and here's our array. We've got an array of numbers, they're just integers. And take a few minutes, see if you can write some code just using each to see if you can find the largest number in this array. Okay, so let's take about 3 minutes and see what you can come up with. All right, do I have someone who would like to share a solution that they thought of? Even if you didn't get all the way through writing it, we can at least work with what you started with. Oh, Alex, yeah, perfect. Go ahead.
So I actually didn't use an enumerable. I just sorted the string and then did a dot last.
Okay, cool. That will work. And we'll talk about dot sort in a little bit, actually. So that's a great solution. Did anyone do it with dot each? Joe?
I created a variable first called greatest equals 5, any integer really. And then in
0?
the nums.each, do greatest equal num if num greater than greatest.
Oh, I see. So you're using a guard clause. So you say greatest equals num if
Num greater than greatest.
tongue twister there.
Yeah, the greatest is missing a T.
Thank you. It sure was. All right, cool. Yeah, so this guard clause, if you all haven't seen this yet, what it does, it's like a shorthand if statement. And so it checks the right-hand side of the if first to see, okay, is this condition true? If that condition is true, then it'll perform the action on the left. So this is called a guard clause in Ruby. So what Joe's checking here is if the num, so whichever number we're iterating over here, if this is greater than greatest, then change the value of greatest, right? So as it goes through the first time, 7 will make this condition true. So greatest will be 7. Then 32 will also make this condition true. That'll be stored here. 99 will make this condition true. So 99 will be stored here. Then 34 though, 34 is not greater than 99. So this condition will now be false. And then same for 74, it'll be false. So then if we take a look down here at greatest, we should see that it's holding 99. So let's check that and see if that's accurate. Awesome, cool. Yeah, that's a good solution. And so the point here that we wanna look at is that in order to see which number or which element was the biggest, we still had to iterate through every element. Okay, and so Ruby, because this is such a common thing, Ruby gives us some really cool enumerables to do this with. Actually, let me go back into my price session. Alex mentioned this dot sort, which is an enumerable that is doing the sorting for you. So if we look at nums right now, it's just a bunch of integers all out of order. If we do nums dot sort, it puts it in order for us. But we also have a really cool enumerable called max and min, which is, we'll take a palm right after this. But what max and min do for us is exactly this. It's going to enumerate through an array of integers. We'll say integers for now. And it will spit back to us the biggest or the smallest. So if we, let's see, nums is still unsorted. So if I do nums dot max, it will pull for me the biggest number. Same with nums dot min. But these are still considered enumerables, right? Because they have to still enumerate over the entire collection in order to figure out which element is the max and which one is the min. So we have some really cool enumerables at our disposal. There's some more complexity we can add to these. Actually, a really good place to leave us on, and then I'll get to, actually, Alex, what's your question? Go ahead.
If you called that on like a string or an array of strings, would it sort for like the largest or smallest word?
Wonderful question, Alex. That is exactly what I wanted to illustrate next. It's like you read my mind. So let's look at that. If we did officemates.max, what, everyone in your head, what do you think will be the return value. What is it maxing? Is that what you thought? Totally not what I thought. So in this exploration, why it's doing this, we're gonna actually explore that in some breakout rooms, okay? And so what I'll say here is whenever you have a string, we need to be more specific and tell Ruby, what do we want it to be looking at? You're understanding this a little bit in Battleship if you're using like ordinal values, things like that. Everything in Ruby, all these characters have like, they break down to numbers, right? Because everything has to be broken down to zeros and ones for the machine to read at some point. So what Max does with strings is it does some kind of evaluation on the letters and looks at their, I don't know if it's ordinal values necessarily, but it looks at their, maybe it's an ASCII number, I'm not exactly sure, but it looks at that digital representation, its numerical representation, to try to order them. And capitals and lowercase have, like capital T and lowercase t have different values, so it gets kind of funky. So what we have to do is be much more specific and tell Ruby, you know, I want to max this by, you know, the first letter, if like A being the max letter or the min letter, or by the number of characters in their name, something like that. We have to be much more specific. So let's take a 5-minute palm. When we come back, we're going to go into some breakout rooms to explore this behavior a little bit more. Alex, that was a perfect segue. Okay, we're ready to come back together. No, my computer was muted, so I don't think you heard the howler, the timer, which is your indicator. That's going to be like a sound now. In like a year from now, you're going to hear the sound of this howler and you're going to suddenly like rush back to your computer screen and you're not sure why you had that reaction. Okay, cool. So we're going to do some breakout rooms. I would love in this case to have one person share their screen. And the reason we do this is a couple reasons. One, it's helpful for like a Zoom conversation to have a single screen that everyone's looking at, you can all refer to when having a discussion. Also though, it invites more collaboration into this, and I really want you to use this breakout room time to ask each other questions and get some insight into how other people are solving problems, making sure everyone in your breakout room understands the solution that you all came up with. So don't just rush through these. That's not the idea of any of the exercises we give you, but to really have a discussion about it and understand what's going on. All right, so I'm going to drop your tasks in your Slack channel. They're there. I will do breakout rooms. How about we do whoever had their birthday most recently is the one who will screen share. Does that make sense? So whoever celebrated most recently. Cool. Any questions about what you're doing in your breakout rooms? Cool. I'll pop around. Happy exploring. It's like Dora, not Dora, Nemo. Perfect. So I heard a lot of really, really good discussion in those groups, and I love to go through some of these to see what solutions that you all came up with. But how about this first one where, well, actually, I guess I can open it up for questions first. So were there any interesting questions that came up? Anything that seemed really like bizarre or seems unclear? Sam, go right ahead.
There are some cases when if you don't input any conditionals properly and nothing returns from enumerable, the default value for the return is the enumerable itself. Is there ever a case that you want to actually use enumerable? Because I would think that if nothing's returned, the better thing would be to return a error, I guess. But sometimes an enumerable is just returned. And I don't know in the case that would be helpful ever, basically.
Wait, which enumerable did you find that behavior in?
None here, but I always run
Mhm.
into it. Essentially, like just if I put a conditional wrong and nothing is returned, the default value to return is enumerable, and it has like enumerable with an object ID that returns.
Yeah. A lot of times that's not going to be the error that usually that means there's an error like in the coding or how you're grabbing onto the return value of what you've evaluated, because typically what'll happen is like, find all, for example, if it doesn't find anything that matches the condition, it still returns an empty array. So if we write something funny, by funny I mean like if we mistyped our code or something, maybe we'll get back an enumerable because it's not sure how to handle what we've input. And that would be an error that our testing should catch for, that it's returning either an array populated or an empty array. And if it's not returning one of those things, then we've got some other kind of errors going on. Cool. Sam, if you see that again in a particular place though, definitely like ping one of us to be like, hey, got this weird behavior. Can you come like walk through this with me? Because sometimes I have seen that sometimes, and a lot of times it'll happen like in Pry when we're testing code, because of how we're storing it. Or sometimes if you do, when I've seen this a lot is if you do like a puts in front of your enumerable block, you'll get that. And the puts like does some odd behavior here. So I wouldn't recommend doing a puts in front of an enumerable block.
That looks really familiar. We actually just did puts max by, I think. That's where it was.
Okay, yeah. So that's not, puts does that because it's like inspecting it also. So it's popping back like that it's an enumerable, but that's not normally something you're gonna see in your actual code. Cool, awesome. Karen, question.
So sorry if we already went over this, but the reason why when we list the array alphabetically, Michael comes back last lowercase and Angela comes back second to last lowercase, is it because of the ordinal values of the lowercase letters?
If you're just using a max or a min, then yes, it's going to look at just the ordinal values. And that's why we want to use the max by or min by to give it more specificity in what exactly we're looking for. So maybe let's do an example, Karen, and then see if that helps with the question. If not, we can definitely come back and revisit this question. It's not something that we've like covered. And I definitely want to make sure that that point gets ironed out for everyone.
Okay.
Cool. So with that one, for example, let's look at like number one, if use the max by enumerable to find the office mate with the longest name. Does someone want to pop off mute or raise their hand to volunteer to walk me through the code that you decided to use with this one? No one got a solution with max by that they want to share?
I could share. Let's see. So
James, perfect, thank you.
yeah, no problem. We did it both ways. We used max and we did max by. Do you care which one I go with?
Let's do your max first.
Okay, so we did the office mates dot max, and then do x, and you can do x and y because you're going to need two arguments here.
What does x and y represent?
The
okay.
first and the last.
I know you're.
First and the next, yeah.
Okay.
And then you do if x dot length. Actually, I don't think you have to do the if statement. I just said that. I just shouldn't say if.
Sorry.
So x dot length is less than, equal, or greater than. I don't know what that's called. It's on that like list. Y dot length, yeah. And then its longest name, and it should it'll return Michael.
Awesome. Let's talk about this real quick. So what's interesting with the max and min is you can pass it a block, but the only thing it will evaluate is this right here, which is called a spaceship operator in Ruby. which is like the coolest name for an operator ever. So, and we're not going to go over that too much today, but it's doing some sorting under the hood. I do encourage you to look at that when you've got some free time, just to look a little bit about what that's doing. It's not always the most readable in terms of, like, if we're thinking about making our code very legible and very readable, in my opinion, Spaceship Operator does not accomplish that. So this will work, but I much prefer a max by for the reasons, well, let's look at them. So James, go ahead with, how did you do this with max by?
Yeah, max by is a lot like cleaner. So you do the office mates dot max by, and then do the block value X, whatever you want it to be. Yeah.
Something
and then you just
descriptive.
do, yeah, and then you just do mate dot length.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, very cool. So this is perfect. So what we're doing here is we're saying, okay, we're finding the max by, here's our condition I want you to look for, is the length of the mate. And we know mate is just a string, so we're just looking for the length of that string, and that's what max by will return, is the mate, the element that matches that condition. So both of these will work, right? And then if you do use something like this, I would encourage you to find better block variable names than X and Y. Remember, X and Y are not descriptive. What you'll see a lot though with max is just like an A or a B or an X and a Y, because it's just doing this like algorithmic sorting under the hood for you with negative ones and zeros and ones, and it's sorting all these things. And that's what the Spaceship Operator is doing. But again, I don't think that is as readable as this is. So especially as these get more complex, or if you're working with an object and you have to evaluate different like properties of that object or different attributes, this might become less and less readable. Awesome, but this works and this is great. Any questions about max or max by? Yeah, Adam.
Yeah, so my breakout room group, they taught me an awesome little shortcut, the ampersand colon. Just a question for you, is it recommended that we do that? Is it considered better to break it out?
Great question. And this is, I think it was Isabel who asked about the ampersand colon earlier. And so, yeah, this is definitely a case where you could use it. And so the criteria when you can use that shortcut is if your block variable, if you're just calling a single method on your block variable. And so here you would change this, so it would just become ampersand colon length. So it says whatever the block variable is, just call dot length on that, and that's what the block is going to be. I again, like, is this more readable than this? I think it depends on the context. So I don't have a problem if you use this as long as you can explain what's going on. But you might, in Ruby land, you might get some feedback that this is not as readable as passing a block.
Thank you.
But yeah, definitely. So, but I do encourage you to understand what this is and recognize it, because you absolutely do see it. So these are all accomplishing the same thing. A million ways to do this, right? How about the one, use a different enumerable to return back an array of office mates sorted in alphabetical order? I actually saw some very interesting solutions on this one. Anyone want to share what their group did? There was a group that used, and I can't remember which group it was, that the .ord method on this one. Does someone from that group want to share what they did? Because I thought that was an interesting solution. Aiden, yeah.
Hi, I think it was our group. We had used .org to check like if it was sorting uppercase and lowercase by the ordinal value. But I don't think we actually used it for like the first sort? Are we just sorting them by like as they are right now, all uppercase?
Yeah.
Okay, cool.
You didn't use it for that one?
I don't think we did. We just,
Okay.
because it worked just fine for this one. But kind of going back to like what Karen was asking earlier, I think that's what we were wondering, was if it was using the ordinal value to sort when there are different cases. So, but I could do this one as well. So
yes, and the answer to that is yes. Like, right, so if when we have the crazy mates, it doesn't sort them Angela first, which we would assume would be the first one, right? Because capital and lowercase letters have different ordinal values. So it is looking at that to determine. So we do need to do some prep work. So Aiden, what did you all do for this one?
What did we do?
Sorry, I know if you weren't the driver, you might not have the code.
Yeah, I don't have the code. I think what we did was, I think we did crazy mates dot sort. And then, yeah, and then do. And then we, in the pipe, I think we put mate. And I think we have to like put like uppercase the word before we do it. So maybe mate dot upcase.
Okay.
So, or maybe capitalize. I don't remember the exact method, but yeah. So I don't know if that works.
Yeah.
Might be missing something
well,
there.
Yeah. And so let's try it. Ruby, playground. It didn't like my sort. So sort, again, it's kind of like the min and max, where typically if you're using min, max, or sort, we're not passing in a block because it's doing this kind of thing under the hood. And it's just going to sort through that array for us.
To be sort by.
In whichever way Ruby has already determined it's going to do that. So yeah, sort by is the enumerable that we'd want to use. So max by, min by, sort by indicates, okay, I'm going to give you a block and tell you exactly what I want you to look at to determine this min or max or sorting criteria. So here we are doing an upcase, but then what are we looking at in order to determine how we're sorting these?
The first letter.
Yeah.
So made bracket 0.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, exactly. And your upcase is spot on here, right? So if we just looked at the first letter in order to determine the sorted array, it again, we'll be looking at the ordinal values of the G, or sorry, the A or the J, and a capital versus a lowercase are going to be different. And different than we want them to be. So we do need to do either a down case or an up case or something to make them all consistent and make them the same. So if we check this one out, we should see that our sorted mates, yes, are now Angela, Jim, Pam, well, okay, I can't read today, Michael, Pam, Toby. And so those look sorted alphabetically as we would expect them to be sorted, right? Any questions about the sorting? Adam, go right ahead.
All right, I know I have a lot of questions, but why'd you put a 0 after upcase? We didn't and it worked. Is it recommended that we do put something there?
Did that work for you? Let's see, sorted. Oh, nice. Okay, no, it's so because the upcasing, it's still going to look at all the strings and do the only thing that I'll say here is that with the upcase, all the strings are upcase, so it's still going to sort according to how Ruby was written to sort strings. So I always err on the case of being extra explicit about what it is that I am looking for to sort. Because what if you actually wanted to sort them by like the second letter for some weird reason? Or I think I had, I have a weird example actually in the next exercise breakout room that we'll do. Oh, we only have 15 minutes, huh? Okay, we should do that. But where that looks at a different case where you're not looking at the first letter, right? So this will look at the first letter, but again, I always err on the side of being extra explicit so that there's no question about what it is I am looking for to determine what the sorting is. Great question, Adam. Cool. How are you all feeling in terms of like a break? Because we have another lesson that's supposed to start at 10:30. So do you want to take a little break now and then kind of keep going, or well, and then kind of like spill over? Or do we want to do another breakout room? I've got like another 10-minute breakout room to do, and then we can come together for a quick questions and then take a break before the next lesson. Adam gave me a thumbs up, but I'm not sure what you were thumbs upping. How about give me a yes in the chat if you want to break right now, and give me a no in the chat, not the chat, the thing, if you want to go into breakout rooms and get this last exercise. Okay, awesome, cool. All right, so someone did say yes. If you want to break, please go ahead, just turn camera off, take a quick break if you need that. But I'm going to put people into breakout rooms. We're going to do this last exercise just because I want you to get more of this practice. So this next one is going to be a repo that you clone down with your group and work through it. It's some more Office Mates enumerables, but it's getting more practice on doing those. So I'll put you in your room for about 10 minutes. We'll come back for some final questions, and then we'll take like a 7-minute palm before the next lesson starts, because the 7 minutes is a long time, right? Okay, I am going to open up all the rooms for ya. Cool.